Welcome back to the Perfectly Holistic podcast. My name is Pam Mills, new last name, and joined with me my super dear friend Jessica Arrington, also new last name.
Yes.
From Wild Wellness Jess and the Pet Parenting Reset, and I am so excited to have you with me today, my friend, because we're going to talk about a very important topic that I don't know about you, but I get asked a lot, and I think there's a lot of questions just in the social space about, cats drinking water, not drinking water, how much do they need, and then people get a little, freaked out, and rightly so. There's some reasons to be concerned, and we're going to cover a lot of that tonight. For those of you who don't know Jessica, go ahead and tell us a little bit about you.
Oh my gosh. I do too many things to list, but I thank you, first of all, for letting me come and talk, and especially on such an important topic. Hydration is one of my absolute favorite topics to talk about, and something that I will never stop advocating for both our dogs and our cats especially. Oh my goodness. But
Yeah.
thank you again for having me. I am a canine nutritionist and holistic pet health coach, and I host the podcast, The Pet Parenting Reset. And you can find pretty much any and everything about me on wildwellnesspet.com, which is my new website.
Mm-hmm.
And something very, very special there that we'll talk about later on, which ties into this so very well. But yeah, I think there is a lot of just sometimes even bad information going on
Mm-hmm.
social media, especially around cats in general. I don't think people
Yeah.
really understand how complex our
Mm-hmm.
feline friends really are. And I know every time I say this, Jay and Adrian they're like, I want to bop you upside the head. But like, in my opinion, they are more quote unquote difficult than even dogs. People look at cats as like starter pets. They are not. They are amazing. They're healing. They are wonderful animals to have as your companions, but they are not like leave them in your apartment for 3 days and come back. Like
Right.
that's not the level of care we're talking about with these animals.
Right.
Yeah.
They're like our children, you know. They're all, at least I don't know about you, but my cats are my kids, and
Yeah.
your babies are your fur babies are your children too, and so um, they are super special, and they're not small dogs. So there's a lot of really good content we're going to cover tonight, guys. And just as a little tip, we are streaming live on Instagram. I can't see your comments over there, but if you want to drop a question or a comment, come over to our Facebook page or YouTube platform because you can comment there. And if you're watching, let us know you're here and where you're from. Here's what we're going to talk about tonight, guys. We're going to talk about how much water is needed by your cat, why diet matters, hydration versus dehydration, what's normal versus what's not normal. And we're also going to look at traditional Chinese medicine considerations. And then Jessica's going to talk about something special at the very end. So be sure you stick around for this because you don't want to miss it. Um, but Jessica, let's start with just the evolution of cats. How many people know that cats evolved as desert animals?
I know it's really interesting. I was just saying this to my boyfriend tonight that he was like, that the cats are so weird. I never really see them drink because I'm very meticulous about the water fountain and making sure that it's clean and it has clean flowing water in it all the time. And he's like, I never see them use it, and I'm like, that is not the point. That's not the point.
That's true. Um, they evolved as desert creatures in North Africa, for those of you science nerds who like to take all the details here. But their prey, such as birds, mice, reptiles, whatever, contain approximately 70-80% water. So guess what? They evolved with a low thirst drive. They have highly efficient kidneys that conserve water. And they have an instinct to obtain most of the hydration from food rather than lapping up water. So that explains why many normal healthy cats don't drink. So I think that that's an important historical note to kind of put into all this. It's kind of like your background framework, if you will. So let's talk about how much water a cat needs. Do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you sent this to me. So, um, they, because it is really interesting to know how much water a cat actually does need, especially when we're looking at cats that are not fed high moisture diets. Like, the people don't really think about the lack of moisture in their lives, but the information that we currently have available to us tells us that an average house cat is going to need about 40 to 60 milliliters of water per kilogram of body weight per day. And that's from all sources. So if you're looking at a 10-pound cat, which is 4.5 kilograms, they're going to need about 180 to 270 milliliters of water a day. So that could be anywhere up to a cup of water. That's a lot. I don't know how many people are seeing their cats drink that much water a day. I don't know if I've ever seen a cat drink that much water in a day unless like there was something seriously wrong.
Right.
But that's a considerable amount of water. And again, goes to show you just how different dogs and cats are.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So if you guys who want to break down that math, you basically take the 40 to 60 milliliters and you times that by the kilograms of weight that your cat weighs, and you can do the conversion. Was it 2.2 kilograms per pound? So you have to find how much, convert the pounds to kilograms, and then you can just multiply and you get that range. Um, it's very interesting because one of the things you said was total body intake or total water intake. So this can come from multiple sources, and this is how they can get up to a cup of water or up to a cup of water in them every day. The biggest source is going to be the food that they eat, the water that they might drink in addition to that, and then a very small amount of the metabolic water produced as they go through metabolism. So that's science for the science junkies. That's kind of what you want to look at. But let's talk about, when you're looking at the different types of food that cats eat. If they eat canned food, obviously there's a whole lot more moisture in that can than there is going to be in dry kibble or even freeze dried, because you have to rehydrate the freeze dried food because they've sucked all the water out, right? So keep that in mind, and we're going to kind of go through the different types of diets. We're not going to go through all the math for all of these, but if you just think about the source, the source of the food that you're feeding obviously is going to make a big difference. And then are you paying attention to how much they're at the water bowl? And just know that there is going to be a little bit of metabolic water produced just through digestion and things like that as they break down their food. Talk about why it's a range instead of one number.
For the amount of water that they need? I mean, there are so many factors for any animal that are going to determine how much is needed. How the activity level. So, if you have an adventure cat or if you have a kitten, they're probably much more active. They're going to drink more water because of that. They're going to metabolize more from their food, from their water, everything they're doing. They probably have just a higher metabolic rate just because of their activity level. Different stages of life, the temperature outside. I know this is true for both how much they eat and their water consumption. Can be very different, especially if you live in a place where the seasons are drastically different. That's going to impact them heat in the summer, humidity in the summer, what they're already eating, like you've just talked about, the whether they're eating wet food or like a canned wet food or a dry kibble. Hopefully you're rehydrating your freeze-dried food if you're feeding freeze-dried, or a fully raw diet. Those are all going to have very different hydration levels. And we can, I think we're going to talk a little bit later about like the bioavailability of the water in those as well. Their age, and I know we're going to talk later on about their kidneys. And so their kidney function also changes with age, not even counting how their diet and water consumption affects the kidney. So there's a lot. I mean, pregnant cats, nursing cats, even if they're on medications, that can make a difference. And then, of course, health conditions, because we know, everybody knows somebody who has a cat with kidney disease, sadly.
Yeah. Or even, other, whatever disease, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, So like basically if your cat is lying around indoors during the summertime instead of outside sweating so much or panting from the heat, they're going to have less water requirements than one that is in a super hot environment, Those are just interesting, like little data points. Just to put those aside, keep that in mind. So the 40 to 60 milliliters per kilogram is not a hard rule. It's basically, it depends. It's a reference point. So some cats are going to be a little higher than that. Some are going to be a little lower than that based on all of those things that Jessica just talked about. So, but when you're looking at like a holistic picture, and even vets look at this, they want to know what is abnormal, like what is different, what has changed. So like, are they drinking more than they were a month ago, 6 months ago? How's the amount of their urine output changed? Is it more? Is it less? Are they eating normally, or are they not eating normally? So those are just a few things. But then even things like, look at their weight. Is it fluctuating a whole lot? What does their blood work show? Like, what was the last, blood panel, and were there changes in there? Because that can show you that there might be a need to really look at hydration issues. And what is the urine concentrating at a specific gravity? So those are kind of like your vet questions when you walk in and you say, my cat's drinking more water. They're not going to be alarmed right away. They're going to probably go through this checklist with you and hopefully ask you more questions, and let's dive into a little bit and, pull back the covers and look under the hood a little bit. Jessica, why don't you talk a little bit about why diet makes a huge difference, the type of food that they're eating. Why is that important?
Well, it's important for so many reasons, and I have a story that I'll tell you in just a minute, but the moisture content of the food itself is the first factor that we can look at as to why diet makes such a big difference. So we've touched on this a little bit. Dry kibble is going to have roughly 6 to 10% moisture content. So very, very low, like the lowest of the low. Rehydrating your freeze-dried food is going to give you in that 70 to 80% moisture content range, which is good. Canned food, so like whatever you're getting, whether it's like a can or a pouch, and it's like whether it's like gravy or a pate or whatever's in that can, is usually somewhere between 75 and 82% moisture content. So still doing really, really good there as far as moisture is concerned, at least. A raw diet, what most people think of as, a raw diet, something that is commercially made, frozen, that's going to have anywhere between 65 and 75% moisture. And then if you have a cat out there eating whole prey diets, which is amazing, you're again going to get that 70 to 80% range. So all of that, anything you can do other than dry kibble is going to make a world of difference. And the moisture and the water that your cat is actually getting in their body every day. So that's kind of the first layer. And talking about the vet that you were just talking about, all the like checklists that the veterinarians will give. Well, two things. One, always know that a blood panel is not complete without a urinalysis. So anytime you get your blood work done for your cat, make sure you're also getting that urinalysis in there, because there's no way a veterinarian worth their salt is going to diagnose any sort of anything really, but especially kidney disease, without having an accompanying urinalysis. But this was so long ago, before I even got into the holistic side of things. I had a vet tech friend who had a cat that just would not drink water no matter what happened. And what is so interesting to me, that never once anybody in this world, any vet tech, any veterinarian, anybody in the sphere of this person's world, ever suggested feeding a raw food diet or any sort of moisture rich diet. Instead, this vet tech gave her cat sub-Q fluids every few days. And I'm like, I know. It is amazing to me, the things that we will put our animals through in the name of progress or science without even considering nature. Like, just blows my mind.
That is mind-blowing. Jen has a question. She says, if feeding rehydrated freeze-dried, am I supposed to give the liquid the food is soaked in? I would say absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Especially like I know that my cats can be, people call me bougie sometimes. I'm not. I don't think I'm bougie. I don't really like that word, but I really, really love, my cats really, really love when I rehydrate their freeze-dried raw in bone broth. And I think there is something, yes, you're still getting all that moisture, you're getting all of the co-nutrients in the bone broth, but I think there's something about that like added animal product that cats are just like, they love so much, because they are obligate carnivores, right? So like, oh, I love that. So yes, give them the liquid.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do the same. So like one of the things that I do to kind of help speed up the rehydration process is I get a fork and I mash all the freeze dried till it's like crumbly. And then I pour the water, or you could use bone broth, you can use goat's milk, something that they really love, or a mixture of all, all those, and just let it become super, super moist. And some cats really like the gravy. And so you can add a little extra, so you kind of have to get to know your cat's preferences. And it's kind of fun to explore and try different things for them, and give them choices and let them show you what they like. So you can make it more like fun if you just want to have an open mind and just go try and experiment with things. And just because your cat turns away its nose maybe the first time or second time, don't give up, because at some point something was going to click, and that smell, maybe we warm it up a little bit or something, and that smell will finally trigger that biology inside of them that says, oh, I'm supposed to eat this. It's good for me. It's really good for me. Can you talk a little bit about intracellular hydration or intracellular moisture that's found in food?
Yeah, it is an interesting thing that I've kind of tried to put little pins in as we've been talking, and I think it has a lot to do with co-nutrients and how certain things are more natural things are more bioavailable than other things. So intracellular hydration it's not about just taking in water. And this is something that's true for all of us. If we're drinking dead water, we're not really hydrating ourselves. Living water is important, and that the goal is not just to take in a bunch of water, but for that water to actually be assimilated in the body, to move through the digestive tract, to get into the bloodstream, and ultimately to get into your body's cells and hydrate your body's cells, which, I mean, that's what we're all made of. So most of the water in our bodies and our cat's bodies actually resides inside of our cells. So if we're drinking dead water, there's not a whole lot of reason for Kim's like, yeah. There's not a whole lot of reason for our body to even care to assemble. Like, there's nothing in it. Really, thank you, baby.
Maybe she's thirsty.
She was literally just drinking water right before she.
She's agreeing with what you're saying.
Yes. So just because we're drinking water, just because your cat is drinking water, it's not necessarily being absorbed. We actually want it to be able to move in and out of the cells, and that depends on the electrolyte availability, especially sodium and potassium, the proteins and amino acids from in the body that are. So having the co-nutrient factor that I was just talking about, especially for cats being obligate carnivores, is very important, because when you're feeding a high moisture food, then your cat is getting all of that together, and the body just naturally knows what to do with it all. When you're getting it's kind of like eating an apple versus drinking apple juice, right? Like when you eat the apple, you're getting the fiber, you're getting all of the wonderful things in the flesh of the apple, not just the juice of the apple.
Correct.
Which, there are whole other things we can talk about, but there's the glucose and the whole metabolic process, and osmotic gradients is something that came up in that list, and then healthy cell membranes. So there's a lot of talk lately about mitochondrial health, and the focus being shifted towards mitochondrial health, and that is something that I think is important to talk about. It's vitality that we're missing. A lot of arguments online, if I'm being honest, on social media, that people have against raw feeding or fresh feeding, or really anything that we're doing holistically, is that my dog's fine or my cat's fine. Well, I'm so thankful that your dog or your cat is fine. I would really love if they were thriving. Yeah. And like, what is that difference between an animal that's surviving and an animal that's thriving? And I think that this idea of like intercellular hydration goes along with that whole topic.
Yeah, and how healthy those cells are.
Yeah.
So that they can let moisture in and let moisture out, and let nutrients in and out of that cell wall. So that goes back to overall cell health, right?
Yeah.
I say this a lot to clients. I'm like, you can't see under the hood. If you're just looking at your cat and they look good on the outside, they're acting normal, they seem healthy, so you're not really concerned or worried about anything. But unless you have x-ray vision and you can look into under that hood, under that, skin covering, that fur, and you can see at the cellular level what's going on in the body, you might be surprised to find some things are going off the rails. And this is what happens over time, because, things can start years ago and they're just kind of simmering, and they're, not completely thriving and normal they might appear to the naked eye, but inside the body, it may be going off, it's off track, and it may start just a little bit off track, but over time, that distance of getting off track goes further and further away from vibrant and thriving. And you don't see it sometimes until years later, and you go in and your cat's kidney values go down, or their liver values are elevated, or they're starting to have GI problems, and then they start the allergies or the itch, things like that that just kind of creep into the picture, and you're like, well, it used to be fine. I don't know where this came from. Well, it
Well,
started a week ago.
and
It didn't start yesterday.
that is especially true for our cats because they are both predator and prey. So, and I know you talk about this all the time. They are so
Mhm.
good at hiding from us when
Yeah,
they don't feel their best because that's how they evolve. They have
yeah,
to. So
100%.
it's so much worse with our cats. And to again, because and I know we're going to talk more about kidney health in just a bit when we get to TCVM, but another really important point that I think people do not know is even when you do start to see those kidney values increase on the labs that your vet is running, it takes, you're going to see at least around the kidneys are going to be at least 65% damaged before you ever see that show up on the blood work.
Yes.
So it's, even though it is a good diagnostic tool and it's one of the only diagnostic tools we have to find this information out, it's still not like it's nowhere near preventative medicine.
Right. Yeah. Atina has a very good question. Have you ever heard of kidney values increasing slightly when switching to a raw fed diet or cooked diet for cats? No indication of kidney disease per se, but just slightly elevated. Yes, that can be normal. There was it the creatinine? Is it the BUN
Yeah,
or the creatinine?
creatinine. Yeah.
Creatinine can be higher in raw fed cats, and guess what? That is normal. It's completely normal. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with your kidneys. Like you said, it's just indicative. It's indicative that they are being fed a raw food diet.
And because all of the quote unquote normal values are based on kibble fed animals.
Mhm. Ah, that's very good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very cool. Um, so let's move on. I think we've kind of covered the diet part pretty well. Let's talk about signs of hydration versus dehydration. Do you want to start with hydration?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, we're looking at thriving versus surviving, right? So a
Mhm.
thriving animal is going to be hydrated. They're going to look really healthy. So their eyes are going to be big and bright. They're going to look like sparkly and gorgeous. And their gums are going to be really moist and have pretty normal coloring to them.
Mhm.
Their skin elasticity is going to be quick, like it'll be really quick. So when you like tent their skin, it'll
Mhm.
bounce right back to normal really, really quickly. Though
Yeah.
in older or even overweight cats, that may not be as easy to distinguish.
Yeah.
They're going to urinate normally. They're going to have a normal amount of urine output, a normal color to their urine. They're going to have good energy levels. They're going to have a healthy appetite. These are all things that we are looking at as just a really healthy, vibrant, thriving animal.
Mhm. Um, I'm going to go back to Atina. She has another question. She says, "What about cooked food?" I'm going to let you answer this. I feed both of my cats the crock pot diet, and both of them have had elevated kidneys. One is predisposed to high sick disease. I think you probably meant to kidney disease, high sick. I'm not sure.
Maybe.
Which is why I'm keeping an eye on it. And the other one is a senior who has transitioned to cooked food about 2 years ago. So I wasn't sure if it's the food or if it's the fact that he already had some damage prior to switching him.
So that's a really good question. And I mean, generally speaking, most of my answers are always going to start with it depends. Polycystic kidney disease, I
Polycystic
think is
kidney.
what, okay.
Gotcha.
So a couple of things. Yes, as animals age, this is true for both cats and dogs, we're just naturally going to see a decrease in digestive enzyme production in the body. And so it can often be recommended. I do tend to recommend this more in dogs than cats, to switch to a gently cooked food, just to see if it helps them to thrive a little bit longer. Either that or adding in some digestive enzymes.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say about cats, however, is that they are true obligate carnivores. And if we look at the body of evidence that we have over the years, we know that, and why can I not? Pottinger's cats is what I'm thinking of. If we
Okay,
go
yeah.
back to Pottinger's cats, we can see he did the experiment that everybody needed to see, that cats actually do need raw food and not cooked food. They will just begin to, over generations, you're going to see more degenerative diseases from generation to generation with cooked foods in cats. That's not to say that we can't use it for a period of time in cats to, if they need it, and sometimes they do need it. There is, so that's one thing I would say, is that your cat might actually do a little bit better on a raw food diet versus a cooked food diet. But I don't know which version of the crock pot diet you're doing. I would say to not do the low protein diets. Always make sure with cats that we are keeping that high protein content. They are obligate carnivores. We can make lots of adjustments to the crock pot diet. So making sure we're not doing it, like, it really should be as close to biologically appropriate for our cats as possible. No beans or legumes, no grains, that kind of thing. And the other thing with kidney values, my dogs, I'm sorry. The other thing with kidneys is that we generally, like, it's really hard to go backwards with kidney, when the kidneys start to become damaged. That's like the one organ we really can't undo. Like, our goal is to not let it get any worse. So if you don't have labs prior to starting the diet, we don't know where they were, I wouldn't blame the diet. I would just make sure that we are not letting it get any worse. Just meat and veggies, no grains and beans, that's great. So that's a good use of the crock pot diet, in my opinion, is with no grains and no beans added. I would still say, though, like, if they're going to be able to transition to a raw food diet, I would try to get them onto a raw food diet. Either way, digestive enzymes, especially for seniors, is going to be something I would recommend. And any sort of kidney support we can do as well, which starts with, like Feeds Like, adding kidney into the diet is going to be beneficial all the way through, like, the supplements that we can do. I love the supplements from Feline Essentials because they're all natural. From the catalyst, the digestive enzymes, they have a whole kidney care kit that's just amazing. I love it. And I don't get paid to tell you that. So
Right. No, that's awesome. I was thinking as you were talking about that, the reason I think that cats do just in generally better in the whole Pottinger's, study and all of that, when we cook things, you get metabolic byproducts. You get the AGEs, the ALEs, advanced glycation end products, and things like that can actually become carcinogenic. And it's just because of heating foods at high temperatures, even cooking them, even canned foods. So over time, those can be more detrimental to the body versus something fresh that has all the living enzymes and things like that. So that may be one of the reasons why that the Pottinger's cats declined when they started cooking their food versus over generations. The other thing you can look at, and I've done a couple really good interviews one with Dr. Ruth Roberts. We talked about kidney disease. So go back and watch that on our YouTube platform. We talked about all the number of ways you can support a cat with kidney issues already, so that we can kind of, our goal in mind is to keep those kidneys stabilized and not get worse, like you said. There's so many great products on the market now. And I did a really cool interview with Chris, and I cannot remember his last name at the moment, but it was about heart disease, a cat with heart disease and kidney disease. His name was Zorro, and he reversed the heart disease using the products, and he had kidney stuff. So it talks about hydration in the blood and all that. So if you can find that video, it was last year. So I want to say it was probably October or September of last year. It was amazing, amazing. So yes, there are some really, really great products out there. And one of the reasons that cats develop kidney disease in the first place are vaccines. So cats who had a lot of vaccines, even maybe not a lot of vaccines, but those vaccines are grown in kidney tissue, like kidney cell tissues, and so the body over time learns to attack it and attack the kidneys. So, we got to rethink all that too. But okay, but I digress. But since you brought up the whole kidney and you have a senior and polycystic kidney disease, I wanted to try to cover some of those things to think about. So, okay, let's talk about, or do you have anything you wanted to add on that?
Jessica? No, I think we have a lot to cover still.
Yeah. Okay. So let's cover dehydration real quick. So if your cat might be dehydrated if the gums are really sticky, if their eyes are kind of sunken in, they don't have a lot of energy. They're laying around. They're really lethargic. They don't eat well. They may have a noticeably decreased appetite. They can be constipated. Think about that. When food and waste products sit in the colon for too long, it gets reabsorbed. All the water gets reabsorbed into the body, and that's why you get really hard stools. So that is a sign of dehydration as well. If their urine is really concentrated, and you'll know it's really concentrated because you can smell it, right? It's super bright yellow, and it smells really, really strong. That's concentrated urine. They have poor skin elasticity. So like that tent test, when Jessica was talking about pulling up the scruff and just seeing how fast the skin falls back down. If it's terrible elasticity, then that could be a sign that your cat is dehydrated as well. And then in some cases, cats are panting. They're just, they're hot. That's one of the ways that they cool down. So just keep those things in mind. Is there anything you wanted to add, Jessica, or comment on those areas?
No, I mean, I think if a cat is panting, that is certainly dangerous, and I would be concerned quite a bit.
Yeah, especially if take it in context, right?
Yeah.
Like my cats were out on the back porch last week sometime, and it was super, super hot, but they wanted to be outside. Yeah. And I went out and checked on them, and they're just like sitting in the shade, but they were panting a little bit. It was just hot. So I brought them inside, and they cooled down. They drink their water, they're fine. But that's just take it in context is what I'm reminding people there. Talk about when increased drinking is normal.
Well, just like what you just said, the weather is really hot, especially if they are going outdoors at all when the weather is hot. If they're getting more exercise than they would normally get, or just increased exercise in general, like, we think of like adventure cats and things like that.
Yep.
When they eat dry food, I would hope they would be drinking more water. It's not natural for them to want to just go drink water. So that's one of the reasons why dry food can be so dangerous. If they're nursing kittens that they have, they're definitely going to be needing to replenish all the liquid that they're losing. If they're recovering from an illness, and there are certain medications like steroids that can also, if you know that you're giving your cat a medication and one of the side effects is they're going to be drinking more water, then, you should be aware of that.
Yeah, good points. Now let's talk about when increased drinking is not normal. So these are the signs, and again, take it in context. Okay, don't just try to pinpoint one little thing that you might see your cat doing and just get alarmed. Look at it in the context of the environment and lifestyle and things like that. So some common reasons that cats might be drinking more so than normal would be they do have kidney disease. They could have diabetes. Diabetes is, I don't think a lot of people realize that drinking a lot of water is a sign of diabetes, but it's a good reason to go get a blood panel and a urinalysis at your vet if that just popped up and and it's not normal. So keep that in mind. Cats who have hyperthyroidism might be drinking a little bit more water too, so keep that in mind. And remember, their metabolism is sped up a lot in hyperthyroidism, so it could be maybe that's a lot of metabolic byproduct, water that they're losing. So those are a few reasons. I was going to see if there was anything else. Hold on. Oh, okay. Urinary tract infections, bladder issues, and we're gonna come back to that a little bit more in just a second. If they have liver disease, if they have certain kinds of cancers, and like you said a while ago, the side effects of steroids can increase their water intake. So those are just some things to kind of just take note of. If your cat starts to suddenly drink more water. So again, that guideline is about if the cat is drinking more than 100 milliliters a day, definitely go get your cat's blood checked and urinalysis, and just think of it as ruling out issues. Okay, it's better to be safe than sorry for sure. Jessica, talk us through how we can encourage our cats to drink more water.
Well, feeding a species-appropriate diet, or at least some sort of canned or wet food, is going to be one of the first things that we would want to do.
And probably the easiest for a lot.
And the easiest, yeah.
You get the biggest bang for your buck.
Absolutely.
For sure, if you're eating enough moisture.
Adding warm water or bone broth or even goat's milk to their meals. Just make sure, and we've talked about bone broth already once today, but making sure that bone broth isn't made with, garlic, onions, or added salt or anything like that. Like, ideally, a bone broth that's made for pets. Making sure that you're using the right type of bowl for water for your pets, because whisker stress is actually very painful for cats. So if their whiskers are, if they have to hit their whiskers on the sides of the bowl to get to whatever's in that bowl, that's not ideal for a cat. Having multiple water stations around the house, keeping the water fresh and clean, trying a water fountain. A lot of cats will prefer moving water. That is also, something that is genetic in them. It's ingrained in them because stagnant water can be dangerous in the wild. And then using ceramic, glass, or even stainless. I prefer ceramic or glass, but even stainless bowls instead of plastic bowls. And then the placement of your water bowls as well. They're not going to want to drink water if it's next to a litter box, for instance, or if it's next to a washer or dryer that's loud. There are lots of different things that we can talk about in the house that are going to disrupt your cat, but just be very mindful that it's in a calm area away from a litter box, at least.
I want to add something. I learned this from Julianne Hart of Naturally Cats a few years ago. She said cats do not want to drink next to where they eat. So separate their food and their water, put them in two different spots. And I think that goes back to how they actually live in the wild. They go drink in the water hole and they take their prey off into the the field, the forest, whatever, and they eat it away from the water. So that's something that's kind of ingrained in their brain.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know. I thought that was wow, that's pretty interesting. So my cat's water is set in a totally different place away from where they eat. Um, so yeah, it's very interesting. But again, wanted to share that because I didn't know that before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now I want to go back to we're going to talk about the bladder and that kind of thing in traditional Chinese veterinary medicine or even TCM Chinese medicine. There's elements of the body. You want to talk about the elements real quick and just like give people an idea of what the elements are? I know you've learned a lot of Chinese medicine and things with Dr. Ruth.
Yeah, so there are 5 elements. You have fire, water, earth, metal, and wood are the elements in Chinese medicine. And they all work together in a lot of different ways. You have they're all associated with different organ systems in the body. They're also all associated with different seasons, with hot, with cold, with emotions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they are all connected in some way or the other. Some of them are parent to other. Some of them are uh, grandparent to other. It's a very interesting. What's most interesting about it is that all of this was realized and put into practice long before like humans and animals were even like dissected or that we could see internally what was going on in the body and how accurate it is, even though we couldn't do any of that back then. So the water element is what we think of when we are talking about the bladder and the kidney, and which makes
Yeah.
sense. It's what we've been talking about today, right? Is water, and that is the whole urinary system. The water element, again, kidney, bladder, it's associated with the winter season, with the emotion of fear. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot going on, not just anatomically in the body, but with um, energy. So we haven't really gotten woo woo at all in this episode yet, but
We're about to.
we are about to, because and this is something that I have really become so passionate about lately with bioenergetic testing, because
Mhm.
a lot of people and veterinarians kind of dismiss bioenergetic testing because they get the results of the test and they try to interpret it physiologically because that's how
They're
doctors are
trained.
taught. Right.
Right. Right.
I think that is all wrong, and I think that is why so many people have struggled, especially pet parents who have taken the leap and said, "Let me try this bioenergetic test because I don't know what else to do for my pet." They get the results and they try to do the only thing they know to do, and which is interpret them literally. And I think
Yeah.
that's doing that testing a disservice. Um,
Mm.
in taking an energetic test, I think we have to look at the results energetically.
Yeah.
And that takes
Little.
training,
Yeah.
honestly. And I think Chinese medicine is just the best way to do that. So, kind of getting into the energy of everything.
Mhm.
The kidneys, in Chinese medicine, there are a lot of organ systems. Um, we differentiate with capital letters as if we are calling it, it's a name, it's a noun versus a body part. um, the kidneys in Chinese medicine with a capital K, it's the function of the system we're talking about and less the actual anatomical organs. So
Mm.
it is a very interesting field of study
Yeah.
in, in both humans and animals. But basically, it's all about regulating the fluids in the body, supporting the vitality of the body, maintaining balance throughout the body. Jing, which is our essence, our life force is especially when we're talking about, we've talked a couple of times about how the kidneys, as we age, they just don't work as well as they used to. That is part of that life force energy as we age, just not like it's going to naturally decrease.
Yeah.
And there are things that we can do to mitigate that, to maintain our vitality, but it is also, there is a natural part of aging. And I think that goes back to why we really truly need to be so much more proactive than we are, especially with an animal like a cat who is predisposed to not show us that they're hurting at all.
Right. I wanted to share with you guys just some of the emotional states that the water element touches. Obviously, it touches the kidneys and the bladder, so those are the two main organs those are the two organs of the water element. But when there is an imbalance in that energy, you're going to get some fear. And some of these are not going to apply necessarily to cats, but this would just go with me here. So fear, pessimism, procrastination, guilt, powerless, shame, deep exhaustion, yearning, and feeling unfulfilled. So when there is imbalance, let's talk specifically cats. If they're going through a health condition or some kind of situation where they feel powerless, if they're deeply exhausted or they feel a lot of fear, you might see your cat go to the water bowl more often. So if like I'll give you real life examples. So we we are blending our family of 6 cats over here. We've been doing this for 7 months now. But Serena is John's kitty, and she is the most insecure of all the females. And so she can be very hissy, and she wants her space. And in order to help herself feel more secure, she hisses a lot at my girls and Gunner. So when they feel like she's being a little aggressive or, just insecure around her, I will see them go drink the water bowl. And my first thought is, why are you afraid? Because it's not a normal thing unless they are feeling scared. Um, I have cats in spirit who visit me a lot and they drive me crazy. But they get my attention through Gunner and Aylin. And Gunner and Aylin will literally start wailing out loud from another room, and you think, "Oh my God, what is wrong with them?" They sound like they're very angry or very upset or very afraid. And next thing I see, they're at the water bowl drinking. I'm like, "Oh God, who's here?" So those are just real life examples. So if you have been through it, maybe the energy in your home is not very positive. Maybe you don't feel safe in your environment and your cats are taking on or picking up on that kind of emotion, or you've added a dog to the family, and God forbid your cat is like, who is this? Or even adding a new cat, adding a baby, adding a child. We had friends over last night that had 3 small children under the age of 7, and let's just say it was not quiet around here, and the cats were very stressed out. So, look at the environment and look at how your cats are acting. And if you see that element of fear, they're not acting themselves and they're drinking more water, just keep in mind, this is one of those little boxes to check. Their water element may be out of balance. And if you can do some energy work or seek out a practitioner to help you with balancing that, then that element, that energy can come back into balance again. So I just wanted to share that with you because I deal with that just because we're balancing 6 personalities that are very different over here. So, we get those road bumps every now and then.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I was talking about how the elements are connected. Water keeps fire under control.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the water element is out of balance, it is not able to keep fire under control. So fire is going to be in excess in the body. We're going to have excess heat in the body, probably excess inflammation in the body, excess fear, excess anxiety, separation anxiety. All of that is
Yep.
we're going to see a rise in that when the water element is depleted.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Glad you said that. Um, do you want to talk about the kidney yin deficiency? I know that the yin all of that empty heat because you
Yeah.
work in that a little bit. So go for it.
So, well, yeah. So exactly what I was just saying. The yin deficiency, yin is associated with cold. So basically, when we're talking about a yin deficiency, well, there are a few things that yin is associated with. But when I'm thinking of kidney yin deficiency, I'm thinking of a cool deficiency. So we are getting excess heat. So we're going to see the increased thirst. We're going to see more water drinking. We're going to see other signs of heat and restlessness and dryness because we have a deficiency in cool, which is yin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then a yin deficiency with empty heat can lead to increased drinking because the body is cooling, nourishing yin is thought to be depleted. So in some cases, the excessive thirst may also reflect other patterns in the body, internal heat, conditions affecting the spleen, which is I'm seeing spleen chi deficiency like crazy in dogs right now. But and then the lung system too, because the whole feedback loop is really
Yeah.
interesting when we actually look at what we take in when we take in food and liquids, and we go through the digestive system. The main organ in the digestive system in Chinese medicine is actually the spleen. So,
Mm-hmm.
anytime we're seeing issues with digestion that go on for a long period of time without being addressed, which is what we're seeing in modern veterinary medicine right now with all of the band-aids and the hydrolyzed diets and all of the things, we're not addressing the
Yeah.
underlying issue. So because that digestive process has been impaired for so long, the spleen becomes out of balance. We see that spleen qi deficiency. And when we have a normal working digestive process, the energy, the jing that is created by the spleen through processing of the food, so jing being our life force, our essence, which we can only create through what we eat and creating energy through the foods that we're eating, is going to nourish the lungs, and then the lungs kind of provide nourishment over the whole body.
Mm.
So, and again, lungs with a capital L, because these are the Chinese medicine
Yeah.
organ systems, not necessarily the anatomical systems we're thinking of. So, and then again, we have so much heat. We're seeing dry skin. They could have like dry noses, dry paw pads. We're seeing a lot of that because it's just going unchecked for so long, and the body just isn't balanced. We're not seeing homeostasis, right, in our animals.
Mm-hmm.
So it is interesting to see how effective Chinese medicine is at explaining what we're seeing
Yeah.
in modern day animals.
Yeah. Talk about the how we connect those two perspectives and how they look different, just briefly, like the
Yeah.
Western versus the TCM philosophies.
So I think there's room for integrative medicine, which is blending, right? Eastern and Western medicine. And
Yep.
Western medicine really, like, when we take our animals to the vet, if we're lucky, we're getting a veterinarian who is looking at symptoms and asking what is causing the symptoms. Generally, they're looking
Mm-hmm.
for some sort of disease process, right? They
Yeah.
want to be able to label and diagnose your animal.
Yep.
Otherwise, we could go down that whole road, and we have so many times.
Yeah, yeah.
But Chinese medicine is saying what in the body is out of balance that's giving rise to the symptoms. So instead of saying what disease does this, or illness does this animal have, Chinese medicine is saying how is the body out of balance. So which I think is so much more empowering. And one of the reasons why language is so critical, because if somebody says that they are diabetic, they live as a diabetic person, right? But if you describe yourself as a person with diabetes, then you are a person first, and you are managing diabetes, right? So language is so important in this, and I think that really is the best way to differentiate between Western and Eastern.
Yes, I love that. Let's jump to your program.
Yay.
Let's tie it all together.
So I have spent many, many years reevaluating everything that I have learned. And I think I know I will continue to learn and reevaluate, but where I have gotten at this point, and I have been starting really with feeding fresh food to my animals, it has been, gosh, I'm going on like close to 12 years now.
Nice.
And everything and I started small, just like everybody else, learning how important the nutrition from an egg was. The small things I learned. But with all of the certifications I have, with all of the animals that I have worked with over the years, I have come to finally the realization that the most important thing that we can do for ourselves and to our pets is look to nature. And I've said that for years. I've said that so many times in so many instances around so many topics. But actually, and you're Pam, you're amazing at this. Like that paradigm shift that we hopefully so many people have been having and are continuing to have with just the circumstances in the world being the way they are, looking to what is actually wrong. And what is actually wrong is that we have gone from living with the land to living on the land, to from being a part of the ecosystem to feeling like we are above and managing and controlling the ecosystem. That's not natural. And I think that is, we get super philosophical if we want to, but I don't think we need to. I think people kind of understand where my head is at with that. And so when we actually take on the responsibility of bringing a dog or a cat into our home, it, in my opinion, is incumbent upon us to actually learn what these animals need to thrive. And whether it's getting back into nature or bringing nature back into our homes as much as possible, I think that needs to be the very first step. And so with any question we have, like the first thing we need to look at is, okay, how does this work in nature? What would actually be happening with a dog if they lived in a pack out in the woods? What does a cat, and it's easier, I think, even with our cats, because our cats are so stinking close to, even more close than our dogs are to wolves, our cats are to wild cats and tigers and all of that. Yes, they are all so similar. So it's really, it's so much easier to look at with our cats. These creatures are obligate carnivores. And if we break down any and everything that we're seeing that is wrong in our cats, whether that is emotionally or with their physical health or anything that we're seeing, we can bring it all back to the fact that we are not treating them as obligate carnivores. And in our homes. So part of the rewilding program that I have set up, and I'm starting with food because I think this is one of the best ways to really make the biggest difference in our pets' lives, but then also to really see and appreciate who they are as a different species from us. So cats being obligate carnivores, I mean, I have a program, but you can just go to wildwellnesspet.com and read. It's right there in the navigation bar. It says rewild your pet's diet, and you can read all about what it means to rewild your pet's diet. I have it broken down between dogs and cats, and they're, one of the things we talk most about cats being obligate carnivores is that there are amino acids and fatty acids found in animal tissue that they cannot get from plants, that they cannot make on their own. They have to eat animal-based diets. But it does go so much more than that, because again, we can talk about the enrichment that they need. We can talk about the hunting behavior that they need to express every day. We can talk about, all of the things that I love to talk about, whether that is, circadian rhythm and light therapy, to grounding, the fact that our cats aren't touching the earth. Most cats are not. Your cats are. Riley gets to go outside whenever he wants right now, but when we move next month, I'm trying to figure that out, because all he's going to have is a balcony. But he loves being outside, and I really credit like where he is right now to me just letting him go outside if that's where he wants to be. But feeding a healthy adult cat, their diet should consist of between 70 and 80% muscle meat. And then we can take that a step further and look at what are the appropriate species that they should be eating. Mm-hmm. So you talked about this earlier, whether that's, small birds or mice or lizards, like what, and we may not be able to find a lot of those types of animals commercially. Some we can, in some instances we can. But it's not just about feeding them a commercial food. I think most of us are still going to feed commercial foods, and we need to be able to work within that set that, like what we have available to us. But how can we alter it to make it even more species appropriate? So about 20% organ meat, half of that being liver. Mm-hmm. I actually think this can go higher for cats. And I think cats like a lot more organ meat, but to be, for the average cat, we could start at around 20%. Raw edible bone. So having that bone content, I truly think is very, very important. A lot of people will feed cats, eggshell powder because it's more palatable. And we can do that in a transition phase. Like transitioning cats is a whole thing, and I'm sure you've talked about it many times. Incorporating those small oily fish for omega-3s. I don't like feeding a ton of fish to cats, generally speaking, but are just how we live today and how animals are raised, how like the amount of dead dirt we have on this planet leads to having insufficient nutrition in the animals and plants that are being raised for food. Like that's just where we are. So having to supplement omega-3s is going to be important. And then having additions throughout the week that are very species specific, whether that is adding fur and feathers into their diet, whether that is adding reproductive foods, which I love to add in to dogs and cats' diets, being, eggs. And I think quail eggs are amazing. Cats love them. Raw goat's milk we've talked about. I even consider bee pollen a reproductive food. I think that can be, especially if your cats aren't getting outside, supplementing that can be, the minerals in that alone are crazy. But then to think of the added benefit that we can get for, allergies and histamine production and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then where we can, our animals are missing blood. And that might make people really, really squeamish. But over the past year, I have been incorporating blood into my animals' diets, and it has really been a huge improvement for them.
Wow.
And maybe not everybody's there right now, and that's okay. I get it dried so that I'm not like dealing with
Stressed
the
out.
mess. It's not messy. It's
Yeah.
it's not messy.
Like a powdered form.
Yes, but it makes
And
such,
sprinkle.
like, it really truly, again, we're talking about, like, if we think about how deficient the animals that we are eating today are in nutrients, the minerals alone that we're getting from the blood that my animals are getting, like, Kim will eat anything I put on her plate if I put blood on top of it.
Wow.
She never would do that before. Granted, Kim is my dog, and dogs are a little bit different, but plant matter we can use intentionally with cats. I don't love using a ton of plant matter with cats, but
Mm-hmm.
it is, it's part of the rewilding framework. We can use it as needed, especially when we need therapeutic foods
Mm-hmm.
for our cats. Or yeah, so there's a lot. There's a lot, and I would love for your listeners just to go read about it. I don't love the idea of complete and balanced, which means I don't love the idea of commercial foods, but we can still use it in this framework. And so I really go through like why complete and balanced isn't everything it's cracked up to be. Um, Phytonutrients, enzyme support, prebiotics, probiotics, microbiome diversity. Like I talk about all of these things in
Mm-hmm.
the and then addressing puppies and kittens and seniors and animals with GI issues. We can talk about all of those things because they are all important. And then when we use this framework, it is so much easier to use TCVM to modify the diet when we need to as well. So that's what I've been working on, and it's I think
That's
something
fascinating.
that people, it takes a dedicated pet parent.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, sorry, Stephanie Cat Mom was asking about the venison blood. It is venison blood that I'm using, and there are TCVM principles to that. Venison is a hot protein, but again, everything is yin and yang. We never want 100% of one thing or the other.
Gotta be
Um,
balanced.
right, and then also like feeds like, so blood feeding blood in the body, and
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of TCVM principles that we could apply to it. But yeah, it's I'm just really excited for people to learn about it if they want like one-on-one coaching with it, to actually create meal plans and diet plans for their animals. I'm happy to do that. I work with people one-on-one all the time, but just go read about it, and of course listen to the Pet Parenting Reset. But
Exactly. Exactly. This has been so fascinating. We hope that you guys took away some really good points tonight. Things to think about, things to kind of file away, things to look for, and just remember good reminders. Just on overall hydration, what hydration looks like, what dehydration looks like, what it looks like when things are out of balance versus in balance. Keep in mind some of the TCVM points that we talked about, and then really look at your cat's diet and what you're feeding, because that makes probably the biggest impact, and it's the easiest to work with in terms of getting the biggest amount of moisture in your cat that's needed on a daily basis. So, Jessica, thank you so much. Any final thoughts before we wrap up? This has been so cool.
I just love your cats, please, and treat them like the species they are. That really is the most that I want, the most and the least that I want to say to everybody. Like, treat them as the species they are. And I just think people will see such a huge difference in the animals in their homes when they
Yeah,
do that. Yeah.
that's a
Thank
great
you,
way to
though.
put that. Oh, absolutely.
I
You guys,
appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. We could talk forever on different topics as we have many, many times. So you guys be sure to share, like, share, subscribe on YouTube. Share this information out. If you have friends with cats, they need to hear it. Whether they think they do or not, they really could benefit from just a little bit of education. And we're in some cases we're planting seeds for people. Some of you have been doing this for a while, but we really want to reach more people and get the message out because we want cats to be treated like the biological species that they truly are. And so there's easy ways to do this, and hydration is just one of many topics we've covered. But thank you so much for being here. And next month, I'm having Dr. Judy Jasic back, and we're going to talk about low protein diets for kidney cats and the truth about that. So definitely don't miss that. But in the meantime, Jessica, I will see you at Super Zoo, or if not sooner, we're going to go have fun at Super Zoo this year. And y'all have a great evening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for being here.
Bye. Thank you, Pam. Thank you guys for listening.